All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe. Doing another CarCast, as always. It's great to be in Auburn. Tiger, War, Eagle. Auburn, obviously in the dead middle center of spring football training, in the midst of recruiting and getting the guys prepared for the A-Day game. Rumor has it there is a scrimmage game that's going to be open to somewhat the public. I think it's going to be open to faculty, students, and at least a third-party eye is going to be able to partake on where the Auburn Tigers have progressed during this spring football training that has actually been uninterrupted by the pandemic. We have not heard anything about any COVID cases that have stalled practice, that have held any players out, which is very good news, and it speaks to volumes to the future of where we're headed with college football in a state of normalcy. So that's a pretty good sign. And it shows that, there are some directives that are moving forward past this pandemic to where we can get back to watching college football uninterrupted by those outside sources of COVID-19. Can I get a big War Eagle on that one there, especially with all the vaccinations that are going out and really making it to where we can start watching football uninterrupted again. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys today about a couple of things that are going to ultimately lead Auburn to a particularly successful season. Now, when I say success, that's a really relative term, and it's a really dangerous term to use, because most of our levels of success means, a SEC West championship, an opportunity to go to the SEC championship, and the possibility of a college football playoff, or I actually like these games, or a New Year's Six bowl. But I will tell you guys that the wins in the SEC, like my man Late Kick when we first started this thing with YouTube, he used to say, the wins are really hard to come by. Because if you look at the standings, for example, you have the guys up top, usually 2 losses, maybe 3. Then you get into the middle tier to where you start your 5, 6, and 7 loss teams. Actually pretty good football teams. Probably could do pretty well in a different genre conference-wise. But because of the competitiveness in the SEC, there's just not a lot of wins to go around. What Auburn fan base has to understand is that the traditional way of winning, the way we've become accustomed to seeing Auburn win, especially during their really successful periods during the Tommy Tuberville era, the brief success during the Gene Chizik era, and hit or miss periods during the Gus Malzahn era, is Auburn relied heavily on a running attack. Now, that's not to say that the running attack should not be at some level of effectiveness or focus, but in order for Auburn to win football games at the rate that the fan base would like to see them win, Auburn has to get into a more vertical, more field chunking type of offensive progression. Another thing is, folks talk about defense. Defense wins championships. And it doesn't hurt. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't hurt. But even the great Nick Saban, who is one of the better defensive minds in college football history, said that a good defense is just not good enough anymore. You need to play well on defense, but the game has changed, and it forced him to even get to the point where it's like, okay, either I change or I move out. And that's something that was in an article or an interview that he talked about, the evolution of college football. And if you look at all the teams who have been winning or who have been successful at a high level, they are those teams who are able to get those chunk plays downfield. They're able to get defenses and keep defenses off balance, literally scaring the shit out of them with really fast wide receivers, with wide receivers that can game break, and quarterbacks that visually see down the field vertically. And I look at some of the stats, which supports this stuff. Najee Harris, one of the best running backs in college football last year, had a very nice season last year. But then when you look at Alabama's wide receivers, those are the guys that really made this thing work, averaging 15, 16 yards per catch. And over time, that stuff starts to add up. And you look at the outcomes on the field where you have a team like Alabama who has the ability to basically blow out teams that have recruited well. Texas A&M has recruited well. Georgia has recruited very well. Florida was probably the only team that pretty much went toe-to-toe with Alabama, back and forth, but they were able to score and somewhat keep up and then take advantage of some turnovers here and there. But I'm going to tell you all, if Auburn is going to compete, this situation where you have, talented wide receivers like Seth Williams and Anthony Schwartz, those guys can't be 9 yards per catch guys. I know they're not back anymore. Of course, you have a slew of new representative receivers, including Kobe Hudson, including J.J. Evans, and a series of, Xavion Capers. Those guys have to be double-digit per catch guys. And the yards can't be chopped and screwed by a bunch of screens where they only get 2 or 3 yards per catch. They have to be vertical. And one thing I do like about Mike Bobo and the prospect of Bryan Harsin is that they are vertical type guys. They like to throw the ball downfield. They like to go downfield and make things happen in that regard. But I want you guys to watch this and watch this even in the spring game. How vertical is Auburn going to be? And how good are their receivers going to be? Cornelius Richardson is probably the most important position coach on this team right now. He is poised with the task of creating some breakout receivers in this group. And it absolutely has to happen, or else we're going to be back here as excited as we were about Bryan Harsin being the brand new coach, about this somewhat star-studded coaching staff, at least relatively compared to the prior staff. All this money that has been put out for buyouts versus putting these new guys on salary. If Auburn can't throw the football at a high level and get defenses all balanced and literally scare the shit out of defenses the way Gus Malzahn did in his prime with the hurry-up, no-huddle, then we're going to be back to square one. Now, there are a lot of other guys, like True J Champions talks about this all the time. He says that Auburn is doomed. He says not enough facilities, not enough money pumped into the program, and I really, I somewhat agree on some levels. I don't think the program is doomed. Auburn has not had any level of unsuccessful seasons that sustained in the same manner of Tennessee and Arkansas and some of those teams that just pretty much fell completely off the map. But if Auburn is going to compete with the teams that they want to compete against, like your Georgias, your LSUs, your Alabamas, you go out of conference and play teams like Penn State and Oregon and USC. If you're going to compete with them, you're going to have to upgrade some things. And it starts with the brand of football that you play. And if Auburn can't upgrade the brand of football from a, run first, get a running back that has 30 carries for, 260 yards, that's not enough. You got to have 2 or 3 receivers with 100 yards apiece. Throwing the ball downfield, keeping defenses all balanced, and then break their back with a guy like Tank Bigsby. That's my time here for the moment. I'm glad I'm getting my MFing voice back. Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn here for college football, SEC Auburn in the midst of spring practice. 8A game April 17th at 1 p.m. You can catch the broadcast on the SEC Network Plus. There's some other teams that have games as well. That's going to be a very exciting time. It's actually open to the public, like I said before. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Really love the growth and really appreciate the support in my very, very brief absence in relation to how often I put videos out. Another CarCast here. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger. War Eagle, throw the damn football. Bo Nix.